We are living in extraordinary times. Prophecies written thousands of years ago are not just ancient words on old scrolls. They are real events unfolding in the world today. At the center of these prophetic developments stands one nation, Israel. While the world is distracted by political events, economic crises, and cultural confusion, the clock of prophecy continues to tick. In a stunning development, Israel and Syria are reportedly engaged in direct and advanced diplomatic talks.
Israel and Syria are participating in secret back-channel negotiations through mediators in the United Arab Emirates. Well, what does this mean for the chaotic Middle East?
According to multiple news sources, these negotiations involve daily communication and possible U.S. mediation. The goal is to establish a limited ceasefire agreement and potentially move toward broader normalization of relations. This is significant considering the long and bitter history between the two nations. Israel and Syria have technically been in a state of war since 1948. Over the decades, they have fought in multiple wars, including the 1967 Six-Day War and the 1973 Yom Kippur War. Their shared border in the Golan Heights remains a tense and heavily militarized zone. What makes this development remarkable is that it suggests both sides may be exploring a future in which diplomacy replaces conflict, at least temporarily. These talks are reportedly being monitored closely by the United States and other regional stakeholders. Observers note that any substantial agreement could reshape alliances in the Middle East and potentially reduce one of the longest-standing regional hostilities.
Now, yesterday, President Trump signed an executive order lifting sanctions on Syria, a clear sign that the Americans are looking to have stronger ties with the government of Ahmed al-Shara while reintroducing Syria to the global economy.
On July 2, 2025, President Donald Trump made international headlines with a stern warning directed at Hamas. Speaking publicly, Trump urged the militant group to accept a proposed 60-day ceasefire that Israel had already agreed to.
The questions about what comes next in the Middle East partially hinge on if an agreement can be reached to end the war in Gaza, something that could help stabilize the region.
The ceasefire deal included provisions for hostage releases and humanitarian aid into Gaza. Trump's statement was unequivocal. Accept the ceasefire, or it will only get worse. This message came during a critical time in the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu making a major trip to the White House next week as the Trump administration plans for an end to the war in Gaza and the release of all the remaining hostages.
While Israel signaled a willingness to pause hostilities under clear terms, Hamas appeared hesitant, raising concerns that the window for diplomacy could soon close. The ceasefire proposal is being backed by the United States and several international partners. The idea is to use the 60-day pause to stabilize the region and create space for broader peace talks. But as of now, the success of the plan depends heavily on Hamas's response. This announcement also marked a major moment in U.S. foreign policy under Trump's second term, signaling a more assertive approach to Middle Eastern diplomacy. We also saw, on the 29th of June, 2025, Iranian Grand Ayatollah Nasser Makarem Shirazi issued a fatwa, a religious decree, declaring that anyone who threatens the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, should be considered an enemy of God.
Iran's Grand Ayatollah has issued a fatwa for the assassination of President Donald Trump. So is this simply rhetoric, or do recent ICE arrests show that Iran is exporting its Islamic revolution to America's shores?
Although the fatwa did not name specific individuals, Many analysts interpreted it as targeting U.S. President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The context of the fatwa is critical. It comes at a time when both leaders have taken hardline stances against Iran's influence in the region. Iran's official media described the fatwa as a religious obligation to protect the nation's leadership. In Iranian jurisprudence, labeling someone as an enemy of God can carry severe implications, including the justification of capital punishment. This decree has raised international concerns, particularly in Washington and Jerusalem. It also highlights the deeply ideological nature of Iran's political system, where religious rulings often guide state policy. While the United States has not officially responded to the fatwa, intelligence agencies are reportedly monitoring the situation closely for any signs of escalation. Taken together, the developments involving Israel, Syria, Hamas, and Iran point to a rapidly evolving landscape in the Middle East. Diplomatic efforts are occurring on multiple fronts. Some of these, like the Israel-Syria talks and the proposed ceasefire with Hamas, appear hopeful. Others, like Iran's fatwa and continued hostilities from Gaza, serve as reminders that the region remains volatile and unpredictable. Military readiness is reportedly high on all sides. Israel has increased border surveillance and is conducting military exercises with allied nations. Iran continues to arm and support proxy groups across Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq. The United States, meanwhile, has reaffirmed its commitment to Israeli security while also attempting to broker de-escalation through diplomatic means. What's clear is that the Middle East is entering a new phase, one marked by high-stakes negotiations, rising ideological conflict, and a fragile balance of power. For many, Israel might seem like just another nation in the Middle East, caught in geopolitical struggles, surrounded by enemies, and constantly in the headlines. But to those who study the Bible, Israel is not just a political entity. It is the epicenter of biblical prophecy. What happens in Israel matters, not just to the Jewish people, not just to its neighbors, but to the entire world, and especially to Christians. From Genesis to Revelation, the Bible makes one thing abundantly clear. God chose Israel as a nation through which he would carry out his redemptive plan. It was in Israel that God established his covenant with Abraham, saying in Genesis chapter 12, verses 2-3, "I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." This promise was not just a blessing to Abraham's descendants. It was a declaration that through Israel, the Messiah would come. And he did. Jesus Christ, the Savior of the world, was born in Bethlehem, ministered in Galilee and Judea, was crucified in Jerusalem, and will return to the Mount of Olives, Zechariah 14:4. That alone should make every Christian pay close attention to what happens in Israel. But the prophetic importance of Israel goes even deeper. Throughout the Old Testament, the prophets spoke of a time when the Jewish people would be scattered throughout the nations because of disobedience. This happened in stages. The Assyrian and Babylonian exiles, the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, and the long centuries of diaspora that followed. But those same prophets also spoke of a time when God would bring his people back to their land. Consider Ezekiel, chapter 37, verse 21. "This is what the sovereign Lord says. I will take the Israelites out of the nations where they have gone. I will gather them from all around and bring them back into their own land." This was fulfilled in part in 1948, when Israel became a nation again after nearly 2,000 years of non-existence. No other nation in history has been scattered for that long and returned to its original homeland with its language, culture, and religion intact. That alone is a miracle and a fulfillment of prophecy. It was a pivotal moment that should have shaken the world into realizing that God's word is not fiction. It is fact. But the story doesn't end with Israel's rebirth. The Bible speaks of a future period, a time of great tribulation, when Israel will once again be at the center of global attention, conflict, and divine intervention. Jesus himself, in the Olivet Discourse, warned his followers to pay attention to events in Judea and Jerusalem. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 15 to 16, he says, "So when you see standing in the holy place the abomination that causes desolation, spoken of through the prophet Daniel, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains." Why does he mention Judea and not the entire world? Because the prophetic timeline is centered around Israel. The temple, the covenant, the Antichrist's future deception, and the final battle of Armageddon all happen in and around this small nation. Zechariah chapter 12, verses 2 to 3 further emphasizes this global focus. "I am going to make Jerusalem a cup that sends all the surrounding peoples reeling. On that day, when all the nations of the earth are gathered against her, I will make Jerusalem an immovable rock for all the nations." God is saying that the world's attention will ultimately be drawn to Jerusalem, and we are seeing signs of that today. Despite being a nation smaller than the U.S. state of New Jersey, Israel dominates international headlines. Every conflict, every election, every war, every peace deal is scrutinized globally. That's not a coincidence, it's prophecy. So why should we care? Because what happens in Israel affects everyone. It is not just about territory. It is about God's timeline. When Israel signed the Abraham Accords, it marked a historic shift in Middle Eastern diplomacy. But from a prophetic perspective, it may also foreshadow the eventual confirmation of a peace covenant that Daniel chapter 9, verse 27 says will usher in the final 7 years of human history as we know it. And then there's the temple. Right now, there is no Jewish temple on the Temple Mount. But the Bible tells us that in the last days, a third temple will be built. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4, Revelation chapter 11, verses 1 to 2. The fact that we are even having discussions about red heifers, priestly garments, and temple readiness should cause believers to lift their heads, because our redemption is drawing near. Luke chapter 21, verse 28. If you believe the Bible, then you must believe that Israel is the prophetic timepiece of God. Just as a clock tells you what hour it is, the events in Israel tell us where we are on God's prophetic calendar. Furthermore, Romans 11 reminds us that Israel's story is far from over. Though many Jews have not yet accepted Jesus as Messiah, the Apostle Paul makes it clear that a day is coming when all Israel will be saved. Romans chapter 11, verse 26. God's covenant with them has not been broken. It's still in effect. So when we see Syria and Israel talking peace, when we hear fatwas from Iranian clerics, when we witness violence erupting in Gaza or attempts at normalization in the region, we should not treat these as just geopolitical moves. They are prophetic pieces falling into place. Even the hostility toward Israel is a prophetic sign. Jesus said in Luke chapter 21, verse 20, "When you see Jerusalem being surrounded by armies, you will know that its desolation is near." That hasn't happened yet in its final fulfillment, but we can see the stage being set. Iran funds Hezbollah in Lebanon, armed groups in Syria, and Hamas in Gaza. All enemies of Israel, all encircling her. One wrong move could spark a chain of events that quickly escalates into the fulfillment of these very verses. Ultimately, Christians must remember that Jesus is returning to Jerusalem, not Washington, not London, not Rome. When his feet touch down on the Mount of Olives, the entire world will know that Israel was not just another nation. It was the nation chosen by God to carry His name, His promises, and His plan of redemption. Don't let the world distract you. While the media focuses on elections, scandals, and celebrity gossip, prophecy continues to unfold right in front of our eyes, in Israel. If you want to understand what God is doing in the world, look to Israel. If you want to prepare for what's coming, pray for Israel. If you want to stay alert in these final hours, keep your eyes on Jerusalem. Israel is not just the center of world conflict. It is the center of God's plan. And what happens there will determine what happens everywhere else.